psychological part is, and you walked in there, you saw an area, there was like a tub, and people were submerged, and it says on top, inhalation therapy. Now the word therapy is very good, right? Because therapeutic, obviously it has something to do with my health. That's the facade part. But there's a physical part to that too. The gas that was used here is the same as in Auschwitz, Zyklon B. It's a cyanide-based gas. Cyanide you inhale, but cyanide also enters through the pores. And when it enters through the pores, it accelerates death. And so they wanted to make sure that they can go through maximum number of people to increase the efficiency. And so you see to the extent of the technology of science that was used and the psychology that was used to make sure that things go smoothly, quickly, with no hassle, no panic, nothing. It was well thought out. This was not a mob scene. This was well prepared. And so as I look at that, I go into the crematoria and I look at the doors of the oven. And I think in terms of those doors saw the bodies day after day, hour after hour. I look here, who knows, 300,000 human beings. In a way, I almost say to myself, I ask the doors, the manifold, the ashes, the physical witness. And it cries out to us. Do not forget. Do not forget. That's what it'll say. And so as we go back home, this becomes part of our experience, but it becomes part of us. The tracks we touched, the train we walked into and outside of Lodge, that cattle car saw and heard the cries, crying out to us. Zachor v'lo tishkach. Remember. Don't forget. And I would like to add one more word to it. Chizku v'imtzu. Let's be strong. Let's not be deterred by those naysayers, by those who are trying to destroy us again. Because denial, in some ways, is desecrating them again. And so we mustn't let that happen. And I know that we will not. It's a heavy burden. It's a burden we must accept. Because otherwise, they never existed. If we forget, if our children don't know, if our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they never existed. And so, it's incumbent upon us to teach, to speak, to feel, to light candles, say Kaddish, and 4 times a year we go to synagogue and have Yizkor. And when the cantor chants, Achenu b'nei Israel, our brothers were brutally murdered. We need to remember. and in a sense know about them. Because spiritually, we can bring him back to life. My grandfather was murdered in Auschwitz. His spirit, his soul, his words, his guidance is alive in my grandchildren. And that's the job. And this way, they have not been destroyed. They did not disappear. We carry their legacy.
We will make a promise. That's our promise to you. The next generation. That's our job.
And I know you will. That's why you're here.
That's right.
That's why you're here.
Did it before? I did it before. To that end.
And in some ways,
All my life.
and in some ways, we should proudly hold on to that. The fact that they did die because who they were, Jews. They were not murderers. There is a group of people who were invited to come to Israel. 5 children of survivors from the United States and England, 5 children of the survivors from Israel, and 5 children of major Nazi functionaries. And this was not an organized conference. They just were brought together just to speak, to touch, to feel. There's something one of them said, because they were there together 3 days and they talked about each one about different things. And one of the Jewish guys said something which really touched me. Child of survivors. One of the people there was Bormann's son. You know who Bormann was? Number 2 man in the regime of Nazi Germany. His son was there. And this wonderful young Jewish man says, my heart goes out to you. Because when you think and talk about your father, you're talking of a mass murderer. I'm talking about my father who made pocketbooks, but a decent man. So my heart goes out to you. I see it. The generations that are children and grandchildren of the perpetrators have a choice of emulating their parents in words and thought, or recognize the evil. A teacher who attended the graduation of a group of people from Innsbruck, one of my friends, taught off campus. The campus is in New York, and she was teaching off campus English writing in Innsbruck. And as a graduation, they decided, the whole group, about 50 of them, what they're going to do is, since they're graduating with a master's degree in English writing from a school in New York, they will all come to New York. And so they did, and my friend asked me to speak to the group. Now, mind you, 50 people from teachers. And one of the teachers, through her tears, says to me, what do I tell my daughter to do? her grandfather is a Nazi today. But I want him to love her grandfather. She was in pain. I told her what to do.
What did you say?
What I said to her, your daughter needs to understand what the moral code of humanity is, what the moral code of her grandfather is, and challenge him. And challenge him. Doesn't mean you don't love him. Challenge his ideology. Because if she does not challenge his ideology,
He's good for
she won't know what he did, what crimes he perpetrated. And I'm not suggesting she forgive him necessarily. And so there are all these issues. And all this is the Shoah. It is the zookeeper's wife. It's Karl Koch or Koch, the commander of this place. It's Rudolf Hess, the commander of Auschwitz I. It's this wonderful lady in Budapest, Mrs. Farkas, who saved my parents. All that. Each one needs to teach us something. We need to teach our children. It's important because if we don't, future generations will know nothing about this. And they'll commit the same crimes. And one of my hopes is always that people have sayings. See, one of the things we must look at very carefully, what I call signposts along the road to Auschwitz. They were there, clearly in the faces of the people. We must recognize them and heed them. We can't simply stand by and do nothing. We need to scream from the top of the buildings, on the top of our voice. And when people begin to lie, we need to call them out. To be politically correct is something Roth has never been.
Thank goodness.
It's
Good for
and
that.
I couldn't do that because I would be
Denying your own truth.
exactly. So let's go out there. Be strong and determined to do what's necessary. And you all, like I, will find opposition. Some will say, shh, don't make a fuss over it, they're gonna hate us. Don't worry about it, they'll hate you. Anyway. It's necessary to be who we are. Because I feel down in my soul and heart that the Torah and Judaism have brought to civilization an ability to live. The strong shall not oppress the weak. It's fundamental to the Torah. We are now 2,500, 3,000 years from the giving of the Torah, and we still haven't learned. And so it's up to every generation to add their strength, their peace, their voice. So, in addition to Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people shall live, I think our responsibility is also to the rest of the world. Because they too are humans. Misguided on many occasions. We need to be When the Torah says Orla going to be a light to the nation, it does not mean you're better than anybody else. No, you have more responsibility than anybody else. And yes, the Nazis were right. Judaism is a problem because it asks you to behave as a human, as a partner to God. Nazism is the total antithesis to that. The weak, the feeble need to be destroyed. They're a burden on the economy. Let's gas them and get rid of them. In a way, like it or not, being given this piece of responsibility. And as it says in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy, it says, God says, as the Jewish people are going into the promised land, said, I give you life and I give you death. Death. Uvacharta b'chaim. Choose life.
Thank you.